Hey listeners, Tyler Valencia here. Before we get to this episode with Robyn Parets, I want to make sure that I throw out a discount code that she's offering right now for 20% off the Instructor Training with Pretzel Kids. The code that you'll input at the checkout is Teach Yoga Grow, and you'll get 20% off the Instructor Training. And when you listen to this episode, you'll hear all the great resources that she has available for any instructor wanting to join, wanting to grow in this area of the fitness industry. So check it out. There's going to be a link in the description and the code at checkout with Pretzel Kids. So let's get to the episode now with Robyn. Welcome to the KIPS Podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia, and I'm the president of KIPS and Time to Train Fitness. We have a guest that I met over the last few weeks, and she's going to be talking about something that involves kids, adolescents, and yoga. And the reason why I really wanted to get her on the KIPS Podcast was her program, her instructor training, that I feel is doing a fantastic job of providing the support and the steps needed after you take a course, after you take a training, to get you up and running and make sure that you are overcoming any barriers. So Robyn Parets, thank you for coming on the podcast and being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. To kick it off, for the listeners, can you give a little breakdown of yourself and kind of how you got started in the fitness industry?
Yeah. So I've been in the yoga business for 20 years, a long time. I started as an instructor, teaching at other locations, gyms, studios, and then I opened a yoga studio in 2004 that I ran for 12 years in the Boston area. And while running that yoga studio, I also ran kids classes that I called Pretzel Kids. And it was during that time when I was running the yoga studio that I also developed the Pretzel Kids program, curriculum, teacher training, and everything that goes along with the Pretzel Kids brand. Mm-hmm. And then in 2016, I sold my yoga studio and launched Pretzel Kids as a company soon after that. So I've been running Pretzel Kids full time since 2017.
So a question for you that kind of popped in my head, because this last week I heard another entrepreneur talking about adapting, how business owners, companies, that they need to adapt. They need to adapt their culture. They need to adapt when they think something is coming up. Around 2016, did you feel like your brick and mortar yoga business, was there something on your mind, your thought process, like, okay, maybe I need to switch to something else?
Yeah, I had a lot of changes in my life, both on a work and personal level, that kind of brought me to a place where I was reassessing whether I want to keep the studio going or do something more with Pretzel Kids. And I was really leaning heavily towards Pretzel Kids for a couple reasons, namely that the studio industry had changed a lot where I live and probably everywhere, but I can just speak from where my studio was in my market. A lot of other studios had opened. Yoga was offered everywhere. So there was a lot more competition in 2016 than there was when I opened in 2004. Not to say that competition would be the only reason why I decided, I'm out, because I'm always good for competition. But it was just, the industry was changing and it was becoming very fragmented. Where I live, hot yoga was all the rage, and it wasn't that way when I first opened. Actually, the first 10 years I was open, and I didn't offer hot yoga, and that wasn't a direction I wanted to go in, but yet it was very, very popular in my particular market in suburban Boston. So I had to really kind of assess where I was at, where I wanted to go, and make a decision. And on a personal level, my kids were older. I was living in a very quiet suburban town, which was the same town my studio was in. So like I mentioned, there were a lot of factors that went into it. We decided to sell the studio, let me launch Pretzel Kids. And then I would really be freed up to move wherever I wanted to move to, because I would not be tied to being close to a brick and mortar business.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to have more flexibility and freedom in my work and life.
Mm-hmm.
So selling that company, the studio, and launching Pretzel Kids allowed me to have that freedom and flexibility, because Pretzel Kids is not a brick and mortar, and the whole program is really online. Yes, we have classes, but I'm not tied to offering classes in one location.
Mm-hmm.
And really, Pretzel Kids is about expansion through our network of teachers.
Yeah.
So it's a very different model than running a community-based studio, which there are some things about that studio that I really do miss, but I also knew that the time was right for me to do something else. And on a business level, it was also right, because there was a huge void, and still is, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
in the yoga space for kids classes, quality kids trainings, and programs that support teachers to
Mm-hmm.
bring mindfulness and yoga into their communities.
Yeah.
And I knew that then, and I still know that now. And that was one of the main drivers to kind of prompt me to move in this direction.
Yeah.
Is I knew I could fill this void and do it successfully.
We're going to swing back to that last part in just a second, if I can remember it, because it's a good one. But there's one thing when I hear people these days that say, I'm thinking about opening up my own gym. Like, you really want to open a gym right now? And I give credit to people that have over the last 20 years to run a gym. There's so many levels of it that having run an outdoor boot camp, because I never, ever wanted to own a space. Okay, I'm slightly lying there. There's only been one time that I wanted to own a gym, and it was more of a timing. But other than that, because just looking at it, all the pieces that are involved with owning your own space, brick and mortar space, oh my goodness, so many different things. So give you a lot of credit for that. And with the piece with going online, that's still something today that people that know about KIPS and know about what I do with online education, online workouts, they always say, oh, wow, kudos to you for going online. And you were ahead of the curve with going online, all that stuff about online stuff. And it has helped out tremendously over the last couple of years with knowing how to film, knowing how to edit, all that kind of stuff, lighting. And so the switch there, especially around 2016, I think that it's a fantastic move, and part of why I asked the question about the switch and the freedom. I think that you pointing that out is such a big piece of doing online work, is that you're not tied to driving in somewhere. You can go to your desk and do a tremendous amount of work from the comfort of your own home. And it's really a luxury that entrepreneurs experience when they do run an online business. And it doesn't take away anything from how much you work, the hard work that goes into it. It's just a different thought process that you have to set up all these things that are online, but it's still a lot of work with it. And so let's kind of swing back to that last part with the importance of training for kids and instructor trainings, because we're going to talk more about Pretzel Kids in just a second. But the question that popped up in my mind was about, what do you think are some of the, and I know there's a lot, difficulties with adolescent training, adolescent exercise, and integrating that for kids? What do you think are some of those difficulties and barriers for fitness pros?
Yeah, I think you need to really wear a different hat when it comes to training and teaching kids and teens of all ages. And it's a very different, it's like a different animal than teaching adults. I like to say to my instructors whom I've trained or have taken our online training, even if you teach yoga or fitness or whatever else you're teaching to adults, that doesn't mean that translates to being able to do the same for kids.
Yeah.
Because I look at it this way, if you're teaching an adult yoga class, the adults that are coming into your class, I would think, are there because they want to be there of their own free will. And they're coming there and they're, rolling out their mat, and they're in a group class, they're, kind of getting in a line or a cross line formation or whatever. And you're at the front and you're teaching them and they are listening to you. And for the most part, there's always that exception, but for the most part, they're doing their best to follow your lead. So as you guide them into poses, or even if it's group exercise, if you're guiding them into, what weight to pick up or whatever it is that you're doing, they're listening to you. They're captivated. They're there. They want to follow your lead and they want to get the most that they can out of their time in that class. It's not the same with kids. To put it simply, a lot of the kids are coming to classes because their parents signed them up. They might know nothing about it. They don't necessarily know what Pretzel Kids is, at least not at the beginning, or what yoga is. Their parents think that this would be good for them and they're signing them up. And generally, that's what we end up with the first couple of classes. A group of kids that some want to be there because they might think it's fun or they may have had done it before. And some are like, I don't want to be here. I'd rather be anywhere else. I'd rather be playing a video game, whatever. So you're kind of dealing with that type of dynamic, which you don't generally get in an adult class. And you also have to teach them differently. So our training approaches things differently than a teacher training for adults. So I used to run a teacher training for adults, a yoga teacher training for adults. And the whole reason, one of the reasons I started Pretzel Kids as a training was because the teachers that I was kind of churning out of our teacher training for adults were not equipped to teach kids. So as I was growing my business and growing Pretzel Kids under my studio business, if I needed a teacher to teach Pretzel Kids at my location or at another location, I couldn't really rely on my own skilled yoga instructors whom I had trained in my adult yoga teacher training to teach those classes because they didn't have that skill set. They couldn't just take the kids and put them in a line and lead them through yoga poses and expect that they're going to have their attention for an hour. So creating a different type of training that would work for kids in their social emotional development at various stages was really key. And that's what we did differently with Pretzel Kids. So we approach it in a different way. It's structured because children need that structure. Meaning there are different components to a class. So we're teaching our trainees how to structure a class, what goes into the different components of that class, and how to make it engaging and fun so that they can keep the kids engaged, captivated, interested, and hopefully smiling for the entire time they're with you. And that might be half an hour, might be 45 minutes or an hour, what have you.
Yeah. Before we jump in to Pretzel Kids, I know I keep pushing it off right now, but we will jump in more to it. There's one question that came into my mind about that conversation with parents. And from my own experiences, when I was a trainer, when I was working with young athletes, it was just how you said. Their parents thought it'd be great if they did some sessions with me. And so I never really had to have that dynamic because they were already forced out of that conversation of trying to sell. It was already done because their parents already brought them to me. They thought it'd be great and so forth. And so what is that dynamic like where that conversation with a parent that maybe you're talking with them and you're saying, here, I have this class and we think it'd be great. Is that the harder part? Or do you think that explaining the further part down with the kids, the continuation of it, what is that dynamic like?
So we work a lot with the facility that's running the classes versus parents. So we also work with parents, but we also work with like a school or a camp, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we know the parents and sometimes we don't. If we're working with a school or an after-school program, the client is that program director.
Mm-hmm.
So they will be responsible for, running the program, signing up the kids, talking to the parents. So sometimes we'll show up and we have no idea what the kids are like or why the parents signed them up for this class, and that type of thing. But if we do talk to the parents, I get a lot of parents just calling me, wanting to know about our classes. We have a lot of information available for parents on our website that talks about the benefits of what we offer and why and all of that. So they can read a lot beforehand. But generally, when I do talk to a parent, it's at the beginning. So before they'll put their kid into the class. And sometimes I get those inquiries if their child is signed up in an after-school program. They'll just kind of find me and on the web and call me and say, look, my son is starting this class next week. I have a couple questions. So generally, they'll kind of talk to me about any particular concerns they have, if their child has any limitations or special needs. And I'll talk to them a little bit about what we do and how we can best serve their child. I would say those are most of the types of conversations we have. We have had difficult conversations in the past with parents where we don't feel their child is a good fit for our program. That is very, very rare. But, we've had from time to time where a child is just maybe the youngest in the class, for example, and just, for some reason just doesn't really want to be there. They may be acting out or what have you. And if we find that there's nothing we can do, we'll talk to the parent about that. Say, this might not be the best fit for your child. But like I said, that is so, so rare that luckily I haven't had to have one of those conversations in years.
Well, that is the real part of it, though. That probably a lot of fit pros don't think about that. That's part of the intricacies of working with kids, that these conversations and the thought process, because it's not just one-to-one. You're talking to the client in front of you. You're talking to the client in front of you about their kids. Like that's that dynamic that I've always thought about with, if you are trying to run camps for kids, that it's the extra step that you don't really think about because you're thinking, or you've been trained on just working with clients that are adults and all the special populations within that. So going the other way for younger pops, it's such a interesting dynamic in my head. So very fascinating to hear about that. So here it is now. Let's jump into Pretzel Kids. For the listeners, can you give a good summary about what Pretzel Kids is, the instructor training, and just dive a little bit more into it?
Sure. So Pretzel Kids offers an instructor training and a licensing membership program for those who take our training and wish to start their own successful classes in their community or online. So basically how it works is an interested person would sign up and take our training and then move into our membership program, which we call the Pretzel Kids Teacher Association. So the PATA, sort of a play on PTA. And with that, they get the license to the brand, so they can call their classes Pretzel Kids. They can use our logo, and then we provide a host of marketing materials for them to use to promote their classes. And we provide a hiring portal on our website where they can get hired directly by schools and parents in their area. They can get messages right on our website. They can list their classes and get bookings right on our website. And we also provide lesson plans every single month. So they can basically grab and go with a lesson plan into their class without having to spend hours creating a class plan. So that's really key for a lot of our teachers. It saves them a ton of time. And then we also have a really thriving online community where we host a lot of our resources, and we also offer ongoing trainings. We have guest speakers. I have office hours, ask me anythings, and it's all online so they can join in and participate as much as they want in those events. So it's really an immersive and supportive program that we like to call business in a box, or a business builder program for our instructors. So that's probably the biggest component of what we do for our teachers. And then on the other side, so if you look at it like a bridge where we connect teachers to hiring facilities in schools, is we serve the schools, the camps, the after-school programs, the studios, the gyms, any place that kids congregate and classes would be held for kids. And we provide these organizations with the staff they need via our teachers, so they can go on. So say you're a school after-school director, you can go onto our website and you're searching for a teacher in Tempe, Arizona. You can use our search locator. You'll come up with a teacher in Tempe, Arizona. You can send her a message if you're looking to hire her. If you're looking for a teacher and there is no teacher where you're looking for one, parents can do the same thing. You can contact me directly, and I will do my best to match you with a skilled instructor in your community. So that's really kind of a white glove program for those that wish to bring Pretzel Kids yoga mindfulness into their organizations.
Wow.
So we also serve employers in the same way. So we recently worked with a large Fortune 500 employer that wanted to offer like a mini camp virtual program to kids of their employees. So we were able to run that. And in that case, I was able to bring on 2 Pretzel Kids instructors that are part of our PKTA community to run those classes. So that was really great.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the 2 main things that we offer is the instructor training and membership, and then servicing organizations that wish to hire and bring in a Pretzel Kids teacher and programming. And we look at ourselves as the bridge that connects those 2.
I love it. I love it. And that right there, the breakdown and all that kind of good stuff was why I wanted to have you on the KIPS podcast to share that information. Because, I mean, in my years of working on the educational side of the fitness industry, that has always been a major question that instructors will ask. I just got certified. Well, what do I do? Where do I go? Is there something that I should be doing? Because they don't really know. They don't know. They're not guided there. A lot of the educational companies will just, you're certified. Yeah, go find out what you need to do. Yeah, come back in 2 years, get recertified. And so the whole business in a box idea, and that was a term that we also used when I worked for a company called Nesta, was the business in a box for some of our programs that we tried to give them the resources after they got certified in that program. They got the instructor training and then get the resources after to help them go to that next level. And in my opinion, you take it even a step further with connecting the bridge, as you mentioned, connecting them with families and with businesses that want a training. And that's part of, I think, why I think it's so fantastic is that you're giving these instructors that take your educational courses, you give them also business after, which is such a hard part for any fit pro. As anybody that's been in the industry for a couple months knows that where do I get business? How do I get someone to buy a package with me? So connecting them in that aspect, you're setting them up for success, in my opinion. One of the questions that I want to ask you with fit pros, and not necessarily Pretzel Kids, fit pros, instructors, in your opinion, with education, on the educational side, owning your own educational training, instructor training, what do you feel like are some of those missing pieces for people that enter the industry? It could be a personal trainer or a yoga instructor that after they get their training, and they don't know where to go, what are some of those pieces that you think are missing?
So I think you really did a great job summing it up. But the pieces that I think are missing are pretty much anything and everything that goes into marketing and running a business. Yeah. I think that a lot of yoga teachers or fitness professionals in general think that, I've got an Instagram page. I can throw up, posts that I'm running a class on Tuesday at 9 a.m. and people are going to come. And and I know that's not how it works. Nope. It takes a lot more than a social media channel to bring business in. It's like anything. Just because you are trained, you can be the best teacher, instructor, personal trainer, what have you, out there. But if you don't have anybody to train and teach, you're not going to earn any money doing it.
Yep.
So I think that's a big missing piece, is how do I actually market myself, promote myself effectively? And then after that, how do you run a business? Do I need a booking system? Do I need a PayPal account? All these things, there's just so much that goes into it. And a lot of our instructors, join our membership, and we provide so much for them. We provide templates for registration forms, for emails to reach out to schools, like little things like that aren't that little, right? They don't even know how to craft the email, a cold email, to introduce themselves. So we try to take away that friction with, here you go, you can paste and copy and just like input your own information and you'll be ready to go. So that's some of what I think is missing. A lot of them don't even really realize that you need insurance. So if you're going to go out and teach, they might think, oh, I'm teaching at a gym, I therefore don't need insurance. But maybe the gym will cover them in that location, but it certainly won't cover them if they want to run a pop-up class in a nearby park. They need fitness liability insurance. Yep. So I think a lot of the trainings out there teach you what you need to know to lead effective classes, work with people one-on-one in training or whatever the training is. It does give you those skill sets, but it just doesn't teach you how to run a business. It doesn't teach you how to market yourself, how to do all the administrative tasks that go along with it. So I think that there are many, many missing links, and there aren't a whole lot of programs that do it all. So a lot of times they'll take one course and then realize, oh, I got to take another course on this. And then I got to learn how to run my email, my social media. So I got to take a course on that. So there's a lot that goes into running a business, and we're not going to run the business for our teachers, but we are going to give them a lot of tools that are going to help them succeed. And even when we run our office hours and Ask Me Anythings, they can come and they can bring their questions that relate specifically to what they're trying to do. And it's just a good time to like brainstorm as a group, and I'm there, so I'll offer them insight. And then as part of our community, they can also message me. We have an app so that they can message me, and they can also post something in the discussion that myself or other teachers can jump in and answer.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So I guess I answered your question. What are the missing links? And then what are some things that they could benefit from at the same time? Yeah.
Yeah. I like that approach, the thinking and making sure that an instructor, fit pro, yoga instructor, that they think about it as a business. I think that's something that a lot of fit pros get stuck in the mindset of, oh, well, I'm just going to work for a company and they're going to find my clients for me and they're going to do X, Y, Z for me. And so I don't have to market myself. I don't have to get new clients. And I think, and I hope that Fit Pros over the last few years have seen that that's not the case. And you can't get stuck in that way of thinking that way. In the approach of, I need to think of this as my business, whether you are on your own or working for a gym, that you're running a business is a very useful mindset. And so I like that you framed it that way. And a question that came to my mind that I'm sure a lot of people listening in for this podcast, they'll be wondering about the community part about it, because that's something I feel like is a very hot topic over the last couple of years, is how do I build my online community? How do I get people to join? How do I get people to engage? So with your community, what was it like at the beginning? And what do you feel like were some of those useful things that you do and did to help people engage and feel like, okay, this is a valuable tool as an instructor with Pretzel Kids?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, because I think a lot of instructors and a lot of people in general have different sort of ideas for what is an online community. Mm-hmm. To some, it's your social media. It's how many are my community? How big is my community? It's all about your followers on Instagram and how many people liked your Facebook page and how many people are in your Facebook group, for example. But I don't really look at that as being my engaged community. I look at that as these are my social media channels. And, some people in those channels may also be part of my engaged community. So there's some overlap, but for the most part, people that are posting or commenting or liking, I don't necessarily think of as part of our kind of core Pretzel Kids community. When I think of my community, I think of the community we have off of my social media, and we've created our own kind of private, off of all the social media channels, community of member teachers. Mm-hmm. And that's where I find the most engagement, because, it doesn't rely on people like logging into their social media and then getting caught in the sort of scroll, scrolling forever, mm-hmm. and then forgetting what they came there for the first place. When they're in the Pretzel Kids community, that's all. They're not going to be distracted by other things. And, I saw a post over here and I'm going to click through, and I saw an ad, and there's no advertising or any of that. So it's just a place for people to come get support, get a resource they need, participate in an event, ask a question. And that's been fantastic. So we've been on this private community now for about 1.5 years. So it's still pretty new. And before that, we just had our Facebook group, which we still have, but it's just it's not the same. I don't find it the same. And I was looking for a new home for our community of teachers. Mm-hmm. And when I found it and built it out and created it, it's just been magical.
Nice. I like that. I like, because I do know that a lot of Fit Pros run their community on Facebook, and I do those with my business as well. And you're right, though. There are so many distractions. So eliminating those, especially in a work capacity, can be very useful. I think that reminds me of something I heard this week about how businesses need to think about their work culture. And you created something that you're removing the distractions that might come up if you are working from home, and just making sure that they're focusing on the content that you want to provide them with. If it's resources for your business growth, now you've created a space where that's why they come there. They come there for those tools to grow, and they're not going to get any of those ads to click through, all that kind of stuff that you mentioned, because it's so true. It's very true on that aspect of it. So very, very insightful stuff right there. And a piece that I want to go back to right now, it really has to do with adolescent exercise and in that area, because, you're, in my opinion, a gold mine for that. You have been entrenched in it and have seen what it's like over the years. And I'm still an outsider in my opinion, even though I have worked with kids, different ages. I still think it's so much to dive into. And just from a research perspective, and the one that I always come back to is years ago, I read a research article. It was for my graduate program that it was basically talking about adolescent exercise and the essentials of working with kids to essentially make sure that you teach them the fundamentals so that they create these good habits, and then those will pay off in the end with positive body image, mental health, all that kind of great stuff that we want to ingrain in our kids. So in your opinion, how has yoga, adolescent yoga, but also adolescent exercise evolved over the last 10 years?
Yeah. So I think especially now, and probably over the last 10 years, but I'm thinking just really now with the pandemic, which has been 2 years. So a long time. I think it has become so important for kids to move. I think there's been a proliferation of screen time, video games, phones. Kids seem to have phones younger and younger and younger. iPads, laptops, what have you. They spend so much of their time on screens, and that's been over the past 10 years, really. But over the past 2 years during the pandemic, where kids have been spending a lot more time home, a lot of them homeschooling, online schooling, which if they're doing online school, then there's even more time on the screens. So getting kids up and moving has become so important because we want them not to lead these, sedentary lives and up and moving and grow up knowing the importance of being fit and taking care of yourself is so important. And that means not sitting all the time. So that's one thing. And the other thing is mindfulness in yoga has become much more important over the past several years. Yeah. I think kids are more stressed now than ever before. So even before the pandemic, just the stress that kids face on a day-to-day basis with the peer pressure, with the academics, has just been kind of insurmountable for a lot of children, and especially teenagers, with, the stress of getting good grades and getting into college and the competition. So when you couple that with the last 2 years during the pandemic and the added on stressors of social isolation and not being able to kind of even see people beneath the masks, it's been a really tough time for kids. And it's brought about a lot of fear and anxiety and depression. So that's real. So when you talk about it from both a physical standpoint and a mental health standpoint, exercise is so important, right, to both. And so is yoga. So I think because of this, more adults have recognized, I need to get my kids involved in more physical fitness activities, and I need to get my kids involved in yoga, and I need to get my kids involved in activities that will teach them how to regulate their emotions in a healthy way. So all of this kind of bottled together has created an environment where more parents and adults are likewise aware of the importance of this, and they're looking for programs and activities that will help their kids feel better in their own skin, enjoy being active. I think that's key. And just learning how to calm themselves down when they're feeling really stressed.
Yeah. So many good points right there. That the one that I kind of want to jump into is, I think, the conversation with kids. When you talk with clients, adults, that you can use the terms like depression, anxiety, and go into further topics in that area, that it's a serious conversation, but it's one that Fit Pros are getting used to having now with kids. Do you recommend, or what is that like, even if you have to go into those topics with kids? Do you use the same language, or what is the kind of way to approach that?
Yeah, I think, from my standpoint, you have to be really careful about that because I am not a psychologist or a physician. So I need to be careful, and so should all fitness professionals, in terms of using kind of mental health lingo and saying that what they're doing is going to help, either when talking to parents or children. This is going to help you with your depression. So I don't personally discuss it in that way. I say this will help you feel better. This will help you feel more relaxed. This will help you calm down. If you're angry, this is something you can do that might help you smile. So it depends on the age of the kids. If the kids are a little older, tweens and teens, you can talk about things like anxiety, but in a way that's more related to stress, because they know they have stressors in their life already. So you could say, oh, are you stressed out about that exam coming up? Here's something that we can do. Here are some stretches that will help you feel a little bit better, or maybe not feel so tight in your muscles, which will help you relax, which might help you be able to focus better. So, things like that you can use when talking to kids and their parents. I've had calls with parents before that have said, my son or daughter is experiencing depression. Will yoga help? And the thing is, from a bird's eye view, it can help, but it doesn't help everybody. So that honesty is really key. So I just am very careful when I approach that, in that yoga has been proven to help children deal with their stressors and deal with anxiety and help them feel more calm. But it takes practice like anything. And it's also important that you consult with a medical professional.
Great insight right there. Really great insight that, like I've mentioned a few times already, these are things that you don't necessarily think about them as a fit pro. We're not necessarily trained in that capacity. I'm trying to think of certifications, PT certifications that I've worked on myself, that maybe there's a paragraph on working with kids, maybe. And so it's one of those areas that you really have to dive into your approach to it. What can I say? How can I frame it in a way that they'll understand it? Because they're not as evolved. They are evolving. They are growing. They're going through their mature process. So it's great to get that type of insight from someone like yourself. And so as we move now, Robyn, we're going to go into the podcast takeaways. And the way that I always frame these are with the podcast takeaways. It's a great way to get insight from our guest on experiences that they've had while being in the industry. And with this specific question, I got it from a documentary, and I always say this in the podcast, and I got it in the documentary from an individual that did 50 Ironman lengths in 50 different states over 50 days. And I think the documentary is on Amazon Prime if anybody wants to watch it. It's called Iron Cowboy, but he was asked about 3 myths about doing Ironman competitions. And so for our podcast, the question is, what are 3 myths about the fitness industry?
Okay, so I think one myth is that you need to work for a gym or another company, a fitness company, to be successful. I don't think that's the case. I think you can do it on your own, but you have to put on a business mindset hat. So another myth is that as soon as you graduate your program or your training or your certification course, you're going to be able to kind of throw out a single shingle and have people show up. And that is a myth. You actually have to work at it. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of marketing, like anything else to build a business. So you just need to be prepared to put in that work. Another myth along those same lines is that becoming a fitness professional, so if you're changing careers, for example, going from, whatever else you were doing to taking this fitness training that you can just quit your job and boom, move into this new career instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a myth. I don't think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think don't quit your day job until you have a business plan in place and you have clients, enough clients to support yourself and sustain, your way of life and pay your bills.
Yep. That's a great piece of advice there. The one I'm going to quickly touch on is actually that first one with the working for a gym and that you can do it on yourself. And the reason why I'm going to touch on it is because I'm actually in the process of refreshing an old blog post that talks about the differences, the options that you have once you get certified. So knowing the difference between being an independent contractor or working for a gym, knowing those different forms that you fill out. And the reason I bring it up is because some fit pros don't know there's a difference, and they might think that being an independent contractor is bad because they haven't been taught those things yet. And so there's a lot of fit pros that are independent contractors. So understanding those differences is very important once you get done with your instructor trainings. And if you are interested in that stuff, make sure you do your research. So before we sign off here, Robyn, can you go over social media links and any promotions that you have or upcoming events?
Sure. So you can find us at pretzelkids.com. And our social media links are at Instagram, we're at Pretzel Kids Yoga. On Facebook, we're at Pretzel Kids. We also have a Pinterest account at Pretzel Kids as well. And so those are our main socials. And if you've been listening to this podcast and you feel teaching kids yoga is your calling and you want to join us as part of the Pretzel Kids community, we're offering a special discount to listeners where you can go onto our website and sign up for our online course. And you'll see that all over our website. And when you check out, you can use the code TEACHYOGAGROW, all 3 words, TEACHYOGAGROW, where it says add coupon at checkout. And that will give you 20% off our training and your first year of Pretzel Kids Teacher Association.
Awesome. Awesome stuff in this episode. And the one piece before I sign off here is that with every podcast episode, there's always an outline, some sample questions. And I actually do love that. I think I asked maybe one of the questions that I had planned. And this episode is just packed with information for fit pros to apply and to think about, to get you thinking, how can I apply this into my business and what is out there for me? And so great information in this episode, Robyn. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Hey Fit Pros, it's your host Tyler Valencia here. I quickly want to share a free resource we have on the KIPS website and YouTube channel. If you're struggling with your online workouts or just want to see the items that we recommend, check out our virtual training resources page. You'll find breakdowns on streaming setups, reviews on microphones, and other free videos that can help you build your fitness business today. Did I mention they're free? Go check them out at the link in the description or head over to our website to find them under the blog tab.